Hi everyone, so sorry it's been so long since I've done another video. I've been trying to catch up to the countdown. I'm currently recording some of the stuff for it, but very quickly I wanted to post up a video talking about the Evil Dead Red Band trailer that has been coming out, and basically just talking about the new Evil Dead movie that's coming out pretty soon. Now the reason I wanted to talk about this specifically is because we just talked about remakes in my horror class that I'm taking in college, and especially because we just watched the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the fact that I had seen the remakes before I had technically seen the original, it really does put in perspective the fact that, yeah, a lot of the times remakes don't work out. They don't hold up to what the original was. And the fact that, especially when it comes to something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the visuals when you watch it again, yes, for the time were extremely edgy, but now it seems like as if the film is incredibly subtle, it holds back. It's not as edgy a film as we would consider nowadays. And when you look at something like the Evil Dead franchise, the films themselves were not particularly yeah, well, I wouldn't say they weren't frightening, but they weren't, taken as this. They're more a cult classic because of the humor element that was added into it, and the fact that Bruce Campbell's Ash was just this iconic figure that you could really attach to the franchise. And when you look at the Red Band trailer for the new Evil Dead movie, the remake, you can tell that this is not going to be the exact same film. It's going to have its own identity, and it's not going to try and replace what the Evil Dead was and still is, which is a cult classic, basically horror comedy. And if you watch the Red Band, this is not a comedy. The sheer amount of gore and the effects on the girl who's playing the lead, I think her name is going to be Mia. The way it's acted and the way it's shot, it's just, it has the feel of Evil Dead, but at the same time, it's also added in like that sort of Guillermo del Toro kind of feel to it, which I'm extremely excited about. And of course, there's also more reasons to want to see this movie, not only just because of the Red Band trailer and the sheer amount of blood and guts that's going to be in it. The fact that there's no CGI. Now, this is a big thing considering that studios seem to want to use as much CGI and video effects as possible in their films now, rather than going old school and going practical. And I don't say this to knock VFX people, because I have tons of friends that are currently studying to be VFX people, and like, it's what they do is amazing shit. I'm not going to say that what they do is not important in film. It is really important. I mean, I wouldn't have loved the Avengers so much if the CGI hadn't been amazing. But for horror film, I've always felt like CGI is not appropriate for horror films, even if it's a supernatural horror, like literally, unless you're doing monsters, unless you have to create a monster, and even then I would suggest using puppetry. I would not want to see CGI in horror films. The whole element of horror is that you feel like as if it's real. You feel like there is an imminent danger to what is happening to these characters, and that these images are genuinely frightening. And when I look at the images of the blood and just the things that they're doing in the Red Band trailer, I mean, there's a scene where the girl is cutting her tongue in half with an X-Acto knife, and it's like, that is not CGI. It looks real. It looks so real. And it's also kind of like, the movie in a lot of ways reminds me a lot of The Exorcist, in terms of like how they did the makeup, and the fact that they are going old school and they are using all practical effects, because of course at the time The Exorcist didn't have the luxury of putting up of using CGI to cover up everything, to make things levitate, or to just substitute one thing for another, like use a blue screen or a green screen and pretend to make someone levitate when they're really not doing it. Instead, they use wire work. Or even the pea soup coming out of her mouth. They're using a lot of similar elements that The Exorcist is kind of known for, in terms of like, there's a scene where it looks like she's vomiting up blood or something like that. There's the eyes and everything like that. The makeup in particular just looks absolutely terrifying. It's kind of refreshing to know that horror films are kind of taking the hint and they're not using CGI shortcuts anymore. The only time that I can say where in recent memory where I've been approving of the use of CGI has been in Cabin in the Woods, and even then they didn't use it a ton. They mainly just used it for some of the monsters that showed up near the end of the movie. Otherwise, there really isn't much CGI. I mean, yeah, there's a couple points where it gets a little cheesy and it does look a little bit fake, but I mean, when it comes to the monsters and that kind of stuff later on in the movie, the CGI work is amazing and it makes sense for the plot. I mean, you couldn't have that much shit going down at the end of that movie without employing some semblance of CGI. It had to happen. But they went practical when they could, and the practical stuff looked really amazing. But for something like Evil Dead, it makes sense to go all practical. And to be honest, I kind of like the idea that they're doing a remake of something that was entirely practical, and now we're kind of seeing how the practicality of doing the special effects has changed over time. You know, you're no longer going to chalk something up to, oh, it's just CGI now. You can literally see, okay, this is how they used to do it, and this is how it looked in the 80s, and this is how we do it now. You know, I think it'll be interesting to do sort of like a comparison between the two and see how far we've come in terms of the practical special effects. It's also not going to be in 3D, which I'm very happy about because I'm getting very sick and tired of 3D movies coming out. For certain movies, I don't mind 3D if it's a 3D animated movie, like it's a totally CGI animated movie. I don't mind it because the format was kind of designed that way, where it's not like you film something one way and you had to convert it into something else. It's designed to be flexible for that, and you can adjust it based on what you want it to look like in 3D versus, you know, shooting something in 2D and doing a post conversion, or shooting something in 3D and then just not knowing how to shoot properly. I don't like the gimmicky crap of, you know, poking people in the face as they're watching a movie, because like that's where the issues really come in, and that's where it kind of takes me out of the movie. And I don't really like, I mean, who really enjoys that? I mean, I know there are some people who do like the gimmicky stuff, and it's part of the reason that they like the 3D, but for me, I find it annoying, I find it infuriating, I find it has nothing to do with the ability to tell the story better, and that's why I kind of like the atmospheric 3D better, because sometimes it helps to get a better understanding of the environment that the story takes place in, which is why it worked for something like Avatar. But otherwise, I've never really seen 3D employed in a way that I think really works for, unless it was, you know, an animated CGI movie. Those are really the only times that I've seen 3D work, and that are the ones I'm totally fine with. Also, something about the movie is the fact that this is being written and produced by Sam Raimi, and it is also being produced by Bruce Campbell, as well as the original producer of The Evil Dead. So you're basically having the people who created the franchise coming back to do this movie. It's just they're not doing it with Bruce Campbell as Ash. Obviously, Sam Raimi isn't directing it, so it's going to look different, but it is going to have the same feel that I think the Evil Dead fans want to see. And I also think that it's not going to obviously be as humorous. This is clearly a hard R horror film. Apparently, it was actually sent in to get rated, and they had to bring it down to an R because it originally got rated at NC-17, so they had to cut some stuff. Well, that's always good to know. Which I don't mind, but like, there's always something a little bit off. I mean, when a horror film, I mean, you kind of want them to go the whole 9 yards with something like this, and it feels like them having to cut certain things to bring it down to an R. I mean, really? I mean, what did they have to cut to bring it down to what they need? Did they want to cut out a girl's boob? Did someone show some pubic hair? Did they cut something from the tree rape scene, which is a severe possibility? But if they did, you know, that would be really disappointing. I mean, this is an adult film. Adults are going to go see this. If they're going to be over the age of 18 anyways that they have to see this, why not just give a crap? Why do you have to give a crap about, you know, whether or not one thing is in or one thing is out? I mean, if it helps tell the story better, fine. If it doesn't, then I don't mind it being cut. But if you're cutting stuff that is important, that helps to develop something or helps to show something about what's going on, then that's when I'm going to get pissed about, you know, the possibility that something got cut and it was probably important. Otherwise, I'm really looking forward to this movie. I don't know why so many people seem to be railing against it. And I'm talking to more and more people now, and they're like, oh, I'm kind of looking forward to it, mainly because the trailer looks so good, and they found out that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell are involved. That's kind of what's been bringing them around to it. But at the same time, I've talked about this before. I don't like really judging a remake until it's come out, until I see the movie. Because, you know, sometimes remakes can be flippin' amazing. You know, it's very rare that remakes are better than what came before them. But, you know, at the same time, you can have a movie that does better than its predecessor. And I think Evil Dead, maybe it won't do better than its predecessor, but I think it will stand on even ground with with the original franchise, mainly because they are technically they sound like they're two different things, because we do have one that is a cult classic that is known for some of its humor, versus another one which just looks like it's a hard R torture porn kind of movie. And I mean, when it comes to other remakes, I mean, there's never really been a time where I heard that a movie was being remade and I immediately dismissed it or I immediately rejected the idea of it. Probably the only one I can think of now that I'm not really looking forward to, but I'm not like, oh, it's going to be terrible automatically. Like it fully has the possibility of being good. It's just I'm not looking forward to seeing it. The only one would be the Martyrs remake that's going on, and as you guys know, Martyrs was number 19 on my top 20 favorite films list. The fact that it's being remade is kind of bothering me because it only just came out a few years ago, and it was such a beautifully done film, and it was just perfect the way it was. Didn't need to be touched. I feel like the only reason they're remaking it is because they just want to do it in the English language. They want to do it for for American audiences. And I'm just like, just release the movie with subtitles or with the dub. You really have to make the movie over again when it was just put out a few years ago, especially when it's an original film. Like, this is an original idea. Although in that sense I can be I guess I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, because I do like the remake of The Ring better than I like the original Japanese version, which was Ringu. I thought that the English did it better, and the English came out probably maybe 4 or 5 years after the Japanese one came out. So, I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, Ringu was based on a book. So it made sense that, you know, it's just a different adaptation from one source material. That was not a film, but Martyrs was an original idea for a film, and it just seems like they're just going to redo it for an American audience. And unfortunately, with the way that the movie is set up, especially the subtext of, you know, this sort of lesbian relationship between the two female leads, I'm afraid that the American studio that's going to make it is going to exploit that, and they're going to use it in a way that isn't what the original film had intended. That's what my main fear is. But again, I can't judge it until it comes out, and I'm not going to demonize it until it comes out, or until I hear a shit ton of more information on it, because at the moment I have no clue what's going on with that movie. But in terms of The Evil Dead, I think people should give the remake a shot. I certainly am when it comes out. And I'm actually really looking forward to it. I think everyone should look forward to it, especially if you've seen those visuals from the Red Band trailer. My God, is that trailer fucking freaky as hell. I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can watch the Green Band and the Red Band trailer. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later.